Okay, this video's been a long time coming, but I wanted to give iPhone here its best shot. So I've had this phone for over 2 years now. This is the second phone because the old one failed, but I had Apple Care, so I got to go through that experience, and I have a lot of details to share about iPhone versus Android. And the conclusion of this video is they're both pretty bad, but I will say there are pros and cons to each. However, I will be switching back to Android. I haven't used an Android phone in over 2 years, so I'm sure a lot of things have changed. But this is where I left off with Android compared to the iPhone 12 mini, which is a very current phone. So first, I'd just like to show my phone pedigree. Or my phone usage pedigree, and what it looks like is kind of this. I couldn't find the LG NV3, which is actually in my hand right now, one of my first phones. It's great because it has a pop-out keyboard just like this, plenty of texting. It also has a dual screen on the front. Wow, that's not a new feature. And a removable battery, SIM card, headphone jack, micro SD card, 3.0 megapixel camera. This device is pretty great, and it's extremely small. The size of this device looks like around 4 inches in height and maybe 2 inches across. It's very easily fits in my hand right here. Whoops. Compare that to the iPhone 12 mini, which is significantly larger than this device. Very hard to use with one hand. Easy to use with one hand. If they had swipe on the front of this keyboard, it'd be extremely easy to type with that little screen and send responses. But that's newer technology. Following the LG NV3, I believe it's NV2 or NV3, I had an LG Chocolate Touch that I got from my parents when they upgraded. And this was around the time iPhones were getting popular. Couldn't find the Chocolate Touch, but it looked just like this. Then the Samsung Galaxy S4, which I still have right here. I rooted it, installed CyanogenMod. I used this phone to tinker a lot, and it's falling. The hardware itself is falling apart. You can barely see the home button, kind of decaying. The screen's in horrible shape. The battery barely works, and right now it is actually stuck in a boot loop. So this is, I think it's unrecoverable. But it had a removable back, which let you access, and let me see if I can rip it off here, let you access a removable battery. So you could do that as well as an SD card and what looks like, they don't label the camera, but it's probably better than 3 megapixels. Also, you'll notice a headphone jack on the top, an IR blaster on the top. I believe that's what this is. I could be wrong. And what else do we have here? A micro USB charging port. So that's another bad thing for them. And the LG NV3 also had that micro USB. We're still on micro USB even once we get to the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge. But before that, I had an LG G4. That phone failed and boot looped, and I had to deal with Verizon or Sprint at the time, one of the two, for a replacement. They were horrible to deal with. I hate going into any carrier. They're all the same. They're horrible. The people at the shop don't know any technical details about the phone or have any way to support you. And they will send you to India, which is the exact same story. They just will have to deal with it over the phone. And so essentially LG is your only hope, and they will send you a new phone. That one, of course, boot looped as well. The LG G4 was plagued by these issues, and so then when that phone failed, I believe the next phone I had was the S7 Edge. The S7 Edge and the V20 released around the same time, and I got one of them when my final LG G4 boot looped while I was away. So the problem with the S7 Edge is it introduced wireless charging, which means it sealed up the entire phone. We still have a micro USB for charging, which is horrible. And you could not access the battery, so no more removable battery for me. Well, that sucks. It doesn't have an IR blaster as far as I know. The curved glass is a terrible idea. It cracked and was basically useless. They had some cool features where something would right along the side. You could see text, like a notification would display just on the little edge there, but no one ended up implementing anything with that. You could do RS feeds and stuff, but it was really terrible. And finally, the S7, all of them, or most of them, were plagued by a pink line that goes down the entire screen, just like the iPhone 10 or X or one of those. Around that time, they were having display issues in China or something. And a lot of phones had this issue. And guess what? You are SOL. You are not getting help from Samsung. You are not getting help from Verizon, Sprint, T-Mobile, anyone to repair your device if you have a pink line. So that's great. No one likes to stand behind any of these products so far. Okay, the next phone when I got the pink line and retired the S7 Edge was my V20. This is still an excellent phone. I would love to use this today. However, they stopped sending security updates, especially Android 7.1, which has a lot of certificate information, to basically use the phone in a regular manner with updated apps and the internet and so on. You have to load a custom ROM onto this phone in order to get the security updates, which I highly recommend you do if you want to connect this phone to the internet or use any online functionality with the LG V20. You should flash Lineage OS that has updated security or some other custom OS and ROM to the flash. Okay. This phone was excellent. It brought back my removable battery that I really liked. It brought back the IR blaster that I really liked. I could use a remote and control TVs, projectors, fans. Anything that had IR functionality, this could control. It was excellent. It also had a headphone port, which the S7 Edge actually still kept. The screen was fine, and because it had a removable battery, because it had a removable back, it was easy to get to micro SD card storage. This phone is extremely repairable. I actually replaced the motherboard on this phone, and it was not very hard. I didn't need any specialized tools. I just used my iFixit kit, which I guess is somewhat specialized, but I was able to do that on my own after ordering a part and fix the phone on my own. I could not do that with the S7 Edge because I'd need a heat gun and all these other types of glues and adhesive, and it was just a mess. This is a lot more user-friendly. I actually have 4 of these phones because they're so good. And when my brother and dad and family upgraded from the V20 on my recommendation, I told them to get it. I asked them to please give me the phone because now I can use those as parts donors for screens and whatnot. This phone I still use as an MP3 player. It is an excellent experience. I use it as a remote control. The problem with flashing to the latest security updates on a different ROM is a lot of them do not support, and I cannot confirm, but do not support the IR blaster and things like the digital to analog converter, which was a huge draw of this phone, the onboard DAC, which gave you an excellent listening experience through this headphone jack. LG was known for that, and that was one of their draws. The only reason people bought their phones was so they could listen wired headphones. So following the LG V20 was, and I think I got an itch for a new phone at that point. Before I finish talking about the V20 though, one other thing about the cool V20 is you have a little screen at the top right here, and I know it's not on to show you. I'll turn it on now. But anyways, because it was a removable back, when I dropped this thing, and I never used a case, even though you see a case on it now, it would explode. The back would fly off, the battery would fly out, and my phone would be 2 feet away. But all of that energy was expelled by launching parts everywhere. It never cracked the screen. In an enclosed body phone like my G8X, it's hard to tell when the screen is on, but there are cracks all over this guy because I dropped it. And there was nowhere for the energy to go. So it expelled itself, cracking the screen. That's my theory on why removable back phones are a little bit more rugged than a sealed phone, because when you drop them, which is more likely to be on cement or something than water. Why do I need water resistance for a phone I'm not taking in the water anyways? You want the drop protection. I don't have a cracked screen on any phone that has a removable back, but most of my phones that do have a sealed back, my LG G8 and the iPhone, actually had a small crack in the screen from dropping, and I don't typically drop phones, so that's just one other thing. So now to the LG G8X Thin Q. This phone is a monster, and it comes with, if you choose, a dual screen. So let me take that out, And the dual screen attachment is actually 3 screens. You get a small display on the top right here that shows you the time and whatever else messages you have. But inside is the LG G8X. And you can see on this chart here that it's around the same size as a V20, but the bezels are smaller, which means this was significantly more difficult to use with one hand because the screen real estate is larger. This is the phone I use currently for headphone usage because it still has a headphone jack. The battery is good. It has the security updates that the V20 does not. And I don't care about the cracks because I'm just using it for a headphone. And it has the DAC, the really nice digital analog converter, so I can listen to wired music very nicely. The problem with the G8X, and maybe it's after I cracked it, I realized I need a different phone. I wanted something smaller. Enter the iPhone 12 mini. I researched for days, weeks, months trying to find small Android phones. And the problem is they don't really exist. You can go to the Small Android Phone Project and find that the creator of the Pebble smartwatch, one of the original smartwatches, if not the first, is trying to create and source hardware right now to build an Android phone that is around the same form factor as the 12 mini. You can read his blog, you can join his Discord. It's a project that's currently in the works, and you can see them design the phone in real time and participate if you have any input. The problem with the iPhone 12 mini or any iPhone is that the OS is locked. The hardware is great. The OS, not so much. I do not like the iPhone experience. And I can't believe I just said that, but I guess I don't. And that brings us to the problems between iPhone and Android that we can show you right now on this Google Doc. So I'm going to roll through these extremely quick. I know I've taken a lot of time already. So let's just read. Both iPhone and Android are imperfect devices. They stink. Neither company has integrity and is willing to stand behind their product. I've had LGs that boot loop and Samsungs with pink lines. Let's edit this real time. On the screen, not to mention folding phones. There was iPhones that were folding. iPhones were folding. Unable to be reset and had to be tossed out as e-waste. iPhone's locked. He bought a Pixel. Oh, right. Recently, my brother's iPhone just stopped working. That's another story, and with tech support that I had to deal with. Unable to be reset, they washed their hands, and they told him to toss it out. We'll give you a new phone. How crazy is that? He bought a Pixel. You can pretty much bet that anything released on a yearly cadence is garbage. Same principle applies to Call of Duty and iPhones. So let's talk about the pros that I have come across using the iPhone. Keep in mind, I came from the LG G8X, a very capable Android device with a sealed back wireless charging, a decent device. And before that, the LG V20. I would consider the G8X a significant step down from the LG V20. I don't care so much about performance. This was a flagship phone. The G8X was not their flagship, but very close to the same specs as the V60, which was at the time, and also offered the dual screen. It was basically the same phone. But the V20, absolutely amazing. And now I'm switching to the iPhone 12 mini. It's easy to use. It's baby-proofed. I don't know how to describe it in fewer words except for the iPhone 12 is a baby experience. You get to use a phone and get things done on a very basic level. I almost said it's intuitive. It tries to be intuitive in a lot of ways, and it is. iMessage. One of my perceived biggest draws to the iPhone when I was buying it was, I get to use iMessage. This will be great. Android has recently created something called RCS, Rich Chat System or something. It's a Google messaging protocol that they've developed, and an Android can text an Android and have the same feature set as an iPhone using iMessage, where you get the 3 little dots that appear when someone's typing. You get read receipts. Someone can see if you've read or received a message, and so on. Not only that, you can send it from Wi-Fi without signal use. You can send it from a computer that's linked. Now, recently, Beeper has become a possibility. Beeper, look it up. It's a way for you to send iMessage or receive iMessage from a Windows computer. You can forward and send, and it's much more than that. You can do Snapchat, Facebook, all kinds of messaging from one application. So iMessage, it's not the cool only option out there. It works about half the time, given that 75% of people have iPhone iMessage. So given that, yes, it works about 35% of the time. And they might not even have it turned on or be within range of Wi-Fi, so it doesn't work. AirDrop works well. I used to believe this was another drop for the iPhone. Very easy to send stuff over Android. No longer true. I have several issues sharing something with my wife who's sitting right next to me on the same Wi-Fi network, on the same everything, same whatever. Shared plenty of things in the past. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. AirDrop is not a good way to share files. I would sadly rather email them or send them over file sharing like Google Drive. So the Apple Care. One of my biggest reasons for purchasing Apple was I wasn't aware of anything that exists, and I'm still not aware of a care plan that makes sense for an Android phone. Apple does offer Apple Care, and they really push it on you. Buy Apple Care. Your Apple Care is going to expire. Please resubscribe. So on, so on, so on. Yes, I'll buy Apple Care for $200. I paid full price from Apple for this device. It was $799 or something, plus the Apple Care, and I don't know. It was somewhere less than $1,000 for sure with the Apple Care, I think. Now, because I do not like writing with a case or using my phone with a case, especially something where I was trying to keep it very small and to use in the hand. It's also a serious con because what I didn't realize was it's kind of a false sense of security. I started looking up a year and a half into my Apple Care if I could get my device replaced with a new one because nothing has happened. What do I need to do to get a new device? Like, I can tell it's slowing down. What you can do with Apple Care is get a battery replaced for free instead of paying $30, $80. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's not a painless process. You can go to Best Buy, but they won't have the part. And then you'll have to go back a week later and they'll have your phone for a little while and then it won't turn on right. It's not as painless as they make it seem. And they will only replace a battery once it's below 80% health, which happens exactly at the 2-year mark, interestingly enough. I had to extend my Apple Care by 1 month past the expiration date for like $7 because I knew it would drop. It was at 80% and I knew it was going to 79 within that month. And sure enough, it did. When I had just renewed my Apple Care before that happened, and so I was able to get a battery replacement it was like $7 for the extension of the month. Okay. What you do get for a $200 Apple Care price is an American support person. So back to my story about tech support. No one is willing to stand behind these phones. No carrier is willing to stand behind their service or anything. They will send you to India, the Philippines. It's all the same thing. And you will talk to someone who has never even heard of an Android or an iPhone. And they will try to give you tech support. It is a horrible experience. I hate that this is the case, except with Apple Care. I was on the phone with India for hours, weeks. It had been months dealing with the same issue. And finally, they sent me a new phone. They said, oh, well, the new phone will fix it. This is my new iPhone 12 mini that I received 2 weeks ago, and it did not fix the issue. I had to call them back. They had no record of the ticket. They had no idea who I was. It's the same everywhere. It's horrible. Then they transferred me to Apple, and they told me they went through some troubleshooting steps. It was a very pleasant experience talking with the Apple Care person. I believe that's the same type of people you would call when you call the Apple Care number and you have Apple Care support. And not only that, they actually gave me a call back at the right time that they told me they would. I had never received a scheduled callback from Verizon support ever. It was horrible. So that brings me to the final end. If you want to keep your phone, maybe Apple Care could be worth it. You might be able to get them to help you. However, if you don't mind, save the money on Apple Care. Don't pay $250 for 2 years because you can use that money towards another iPhone in 2 years. Let me check eBay right now. iPhone 12 mini. Okay, here we go. 64 gigabytes. Yes, that's our lowest SKU. $350. Why would you not save the Apple Care money, pay another $100 and get a brand new device instead of one maybe they fixed a part, because they're not likely to replace the whole device. They can fix it at Best Buy or whatever. You could definitely just do this. It's unlocked. Not only that, it's unlocked. You might have a SIM locked version. So just go that route. It happens with all the iPhones. They drop in price like crazy because everyone's flocking to the new one and it's turning in their old device to be resold. Okay, the form factor. Now we're on to like a real pro. This is pretty easy to use for me with one hand. Pretty easy. Now, let me go find. I have a few iPhone 5S's that I wish the iPhone 12 was the same size of. And you'll say, what? It is the same size. They're extremely similar in size. Very similar. That phone size application will tell you that they're extremely similar. They almost fit together. Same width, same height, except for the screen size. This one is way easier to use with one hand than this one. But this video isn't about one-handed phone usage. And I didn't ever actually use this iPhone 5S. I just have a few because I inherited them. Okay, iPhone, great form factor, but maybe you can find that somewhere else. So maybe that's not a true pro of the iPhone 12 anymore because of what I'm about to show you. This is the Unihertz Jelly Star. I recently heard of this. Yes, it's produced in China. Yes, it has Chinese firmware. Yes, it could be a locked bootloader, but several people have been able to obtain the firmware to reflash a non-Chinese spiral ROM. But this is a phone that is significantly smaller than the iPhone 12 mini, yet has way more features. Here's an idea of how big it is. About the size of a case of AirPods, about the size of a keychain. There are a lot of pictures in this contest where you can see exactly how large or small these devices are. Here's a credit card, a Nixie tube. Very small devices that would fit in your pocket. Now, yes, it's a little thicker, but I don't care about the thickness of my phone. I don't care. Okay, here's the specifications. It's got a decent battery for the size of this screen, 3 inches. Okay, it has a reasonable pixel density for the size of the display. I don't need a 4K display on an iPhone 12 mini or whatever this has, but it's too high pixel density. It draws down the battery. Not only that, it has fingerprint, facial recognition, infrared port, USB Type-C, that's huge. You can use USB OTG key, also huge. Loudspeaker, sure, every phone has a speaker. Headphone jack, that's a cool thing to have. Doesn't have wireless charging. I don't care. I don't use wireless charging unless I'm plugging it in overnight or putting it on there overnight. And even then, I'd rather have USB-C and sacrifice wireless charging than use Apple's Lightning connector. FM radio. This is something I wasn't aware was removed from Androids recently, but yes, you can use an FM radio with this device, okay? All this to say, this is possible in this form factor of a credit card size Android phone running Android 13, which is the latest Android. However, this one does not have 5G capability. I'm not sure if that's a deal breaker to people, but look at the price, $200. And this company, Unihertz, is creating phones that has 5G capability, so you better bet the next Jelly Star revision or refresh will probably have 5G as well as most of these features, and I'll be picking that up. So, back to the pros and cons. Form factor. So, not really. Call quality. I thought I noticed a better call quality, but I think it was because I was using a phone that was made 2 years later, and they're using more quality components. So, no. iPhone call quality is not inherently better. So, no. Wow, I'm realizing none of these are pros. Privacy and security. This may be another false sense thing. Apple will support their device and still supporting iPhone 5S, which is several years old. That is something they do a lot better than Android, is provide security updates, OS updates, and so on, so that I can use this iPhone 12 mini for years down the line, and I will not be worried about something that will happen like to the LG V20, which I still want to use, but is not receiving proper updates from the manufacturer. LG doesn't even exist anymore as a mobile division. They have shut down mobile support completely. They're no longer making mobile phones, and it's sad. So we've got updates. The hold button, that's something I kind of like about iPhone. I can switch a little button to turn it from sound to no sound, silent mode. Of course, with my original iPhone Nano or Touch or whatever, the hold button, it must have been the iPhone Nano, which was a music player, not a phone. The hold button locked the screen so you wouldn't accidentally move things. This hold button will only silence your device, and maybe vibrations or whatever you set it to, but there are not any other user configurable options for what the hold button can do. And that's where Android enters, because you can have an open source platform where people can develop stuff like that and hook into hardware features to make them do other things. If Android phones had a hold button, you better believe there was a way to make that operate as the original iPod Nano and lock the screen so that you could still see it but not touch it accidentally. That would be something I'd like. Okay, the iPhone, easy to use while inebriated. Yes, that means after a few drinks. Just like I said in Pro 1, easy to use and baby-proofed. The iPhone was easier for me to use when I'm drinking. Okay, fewer but not a bug-free experience. So I used Android my entire life, and there's response bias where if I receive a bug, I will report it, I will remember it. I've not used iPhone for quite as long. However, one of the things I always heard from people was iPhone just works. iPhone doesn't have any issues like Android. Android's going to not work for you, whatever. And I felt it. Yes, there are some user learning curves that you need to figure out, and some toggles and switches and things that you fix on Android, and you all find it online. That's great. iPhone, that still happens a lot. Not as often as Android. I'd say about half as often on iPhone. But the difference is the forum and community support for iPhone is horrible. It's non-existent compared to Android. It's just not there. If you have a problem, you may not be able to find some written guide or something to fix that problem. You'll have to figure it out on your own. Android, not so much. There's a lot better support. System-wide text replace. I don't know if Android has this feature. They probably do. But on iPhone, I really liked being able to set at when I type to fill in my email address, and the same for Addy for my home address. It's a software feature. It's a pro of the iPhone experience. I hate to say it, but that's one of the best software features I could find on iPhone that distinguished it from my experience on Android. I don't remember being able to do that, and it's really sad that they've been pushing out iPhone updates, OS updates that people clamor about, and all these great new features, and really nothing's really that great and really that new. This was the coolest OS feature that I found. Yep, it's great. Okay, then I did a little poetry here. iPhone is communist, tyrannical. Android is the free capitalist government. I don't know if I believe this totally. I realized this after becoming fed up with bugs and lack of features in the iMessage app. That's another thing, you're locked to one messaging app. So I went to the App Store to download TextJar. Any other messaging alternative does not exist. iTunes has a stranglehold on certain features, stifling innovation, locking users into Apple's approved experience. iPhone is communist. Android is the free market, to an extent. Bugs and lack of features included horrible keyboard, inability to change group message names, adjust DPI. That's one of my pet peeves. Colors, delayed sending, copying, editing text is aggravating. There's this thing called the iPhone ecosystem. But within a single device, the iPhone, with apps developed by Apple, it is extremely aggravating to copy and paste text to a different application. Take, for example, case in point, contact information in messages to the contact app. Copying, pasting numbers, adding users to a group chat. These things are extremely difficult in an iPhone, and I don't know why. Overall, terrible user experience. Look into Plato's allegory of the cave. Unfortunately, Apple is the cave of psychological understanding, with prisoners unaware of the freedom they would otherwise have if they were not locked away and hidden in Apple's cave. I hear a lot about Apple's ecosystem, which is so great. After using Mac, AirPods, and iPhone, I got AirPods for free. I used my wife's Mac, so I tested features of the ecosystem. The AirPods work great. Although now I'm going to have to send them in for Apple Care because one of them doesn't work so well. I can confidently say this is false. Apple introduces nothing special with its ecosystem that is not already available elsewhere. The only difference is that Apple products do not play nice with other products. For example, I have several wireless mice and headphones controllers. They all report their battery life to my computer. My AirPods, however, report their battery life only to my iPhone. Clearly, the capability is there, yet Apple fails to deliver. This is just one example of something that should be expected to work. It doesn't because of Apple's short-sightedness and unwillingness to work in the general playing field. I do believe this statement. Most of the items in this list, and even if I'm wrong and somehow Apple AirPods do report their battery life to a Windows computer, that is one of several examples. I'm not going to go into them now. Most of the items in the list are terrible design decisions by Apple, and some are blatant missed opportunities. Enjoy. So I originally created this list thinking I would get a YouTube video that was titled 69 Reasons Android is Better Than iPhone or 69 Reasons iPhone Sucks. And I started making this list and I not quickly, maybe over a year hit 69. I've been using it for 2 years. So I started added these at the beginning in the form of aught, double aught, triple aught, and so on. So here we go. 0, stifling innovation. And I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because I know this video is already 30 minutes long. Find My Network, AirTags, Apple ecosystem, closed app store. All of these things should be completely functional outside of Apple world for others to use and improve upon. Open source. 30% of revenue to Apple from developers hinders indie and all other development. Look it up. See how much Apple is making on your in-app purchases versus Google. And not to say Google's not to blame for... let me be politically correct here. Screwing over developers. Restrictions on apps, especially regarding cryptocurrency. Brave browser can't reward users for viewing ads, for example. Apple better get their cut. If you don't know, the Brave browser is an ad-free experience, and you can enable ads, which will pay you in the basic attenuation token, BAT, which is the cryptocurrency Brave uses to reward users for viewing ads. Doesn't work on iPhone. You get the ads blocked, but there's no reason to turn on that feature because you will never get your cryptocurrency because Apple has banned that. And there's your innovation company. 000, no developer options like Android has with simple tweaks. The Android OS has baked in some developer options, which are pretty nice. They get you started. No such thing on iPhone. 0 quad. Organization of settings is appalling. Settings search feature completely broken, does not index everything. I really don't like the way settings works. I can look through my settings and, for example, I usually keep my iPhone in grayscale mode, and that was a cool thing I could put on a shortcut on my Android. But when I search for grayscale mode, nothing comes up. I have to search for color filters, and what it takes me to... see if I can get this on the screen. Color filters. I tap the option. It actually zooms through to the setting where that setting exists so I can find it in the future, but then I have to tap and turn it on. So not everything's exposed there, which is kind of dumb. And the settings is just one big app full of settings. It's not organized in any intuitive way. It's not good. And I say intuitive way. I've used this for 2 years. I'm still learning how to use the settings app. It should be significantly easier than this. Android, usually a manufacturer like LG or Samsung or OnePlus or whoever's making the phone will put a skin over Android, and that also includes the settings application. So there's some work there to do on Android as well. Notifications cover map directions while navigating. I do not remember this being a problem with Android. Requires do not disturb while driving, which should be automatic. So that's pretty frustrating when I'm trying to take an exit and I'm getting group text and it completely blocks the route information. I don't know how soon I'm about to turn, and maybe I'm in a busy area and I just need to see. It's very frustrating. Okay, per app screenshot detection blocking. While trying to screenshot some apps, they block content from showing up. I don't know why iPhone allows developers to use this functionality. I don't remember this being a problem on Android, but this happens in some banking apps, some other apps with sensitive information, so maybe you shouldn't be taking a screenshot, but developers are able to abuse it. Like, I have a rewards app for gas, and I try to take a screenshot of my rewards number so my wife can use it as well. blocks that information. So what I do is I take another phone and take a picture of this phone and then send it to her. It's that easy. Or write down the number. Like, who is it actually stopping? I don't know. I don't know. No manual focus. Yes, you can tab an object. However, no manual focus slider is insane. You need a paid app to do this basic feature. A lot of people talk about the iPhone camera being better, and all they can really lean on is the hardware. But software does a lot of things in cameras. The Google camera, for example, has a well-developed, mature software experience. The LG had a very excellent professional level of tweaks and settings that you could modify, even at a beginner user level like me, to make your pictures and videos that much better. Manual focus, not something you can do on iPhone. I don't care what you say. Time lapses, not something you can do and tweak settings for very easily on iPhone. You need a third-party app, okay? I don't know why they're driving people to third-party apps like this. For the camera, you really can't develop the camera. No pause option in camera recording. I know I'm skipping one here, but I was trying to make a video where you just pause so I can move the camera and 30 seconds later hit play, and it will not create two separate clips. I want one continuous clip with a cut. Not possible. You need a third-party app. How is that feature overlooked? Multiple downloads in Google Drive, impossible. Must do it one at a time. Android works as expected. So back to the camera thing. With something so basic as a default camera app, that you cannot support it with basic user level features that are present everywhere else. It's not a new thing. This is the kind of thing you will find in different places on iPhone. You'll think this should be there. Why isn't it there? Okay, they've never had it. You have to download an app or do it some workaround way. It doesn't make sense. There should not be that many roadblocks to the iPhone experience. It's just horrible. Okay, back to multiple downloads to Google Drive. Apps that will work flawlessly on Android will have certain weird things about them that do not work on iPhone, and it's usually that way. It does go both ways, but it's usually iPhone restricting something, like in the Brave browser app rewarding you, like in Google Drive, multiple uploads. Maybe there's something mischievous going on. They want you to use iCloud, which, of course, works flawlessly, very easily, because they want you to pay their subscription service. Why would they support anything else? Now we're on to the real list that I started. iTunes. Okay. When I had an iTouch and an iPod Nano, I used iTunes because that was 10 years ago. iTunes is no longer a software anyone uses, apparently. You have to download an old version for it to work and so on. But it is actually the best software to use with your iPhone still. I don't know what people are using now, but it's horrible. I know I tried it and I don't remember what it's called. But there is really no good way to interface with your iPhone on a computer, period. iTunes is horrible. There's lack of support. It's outdated software, so I guess that's what to expect. It's not fun. Hopefully you don't download your own music. Hopefully you don't like to transfer files to and from your iPhone. Hopefully you don't like to... It's called interoperability, using one computer to interface with another computer or machine. iPhone cannot do that outside of its ecosystem, and that goes back to the ecosystem thing. Android can do that out of its ecosystem because it's built that way. It can work with everything. So, good Lord, I hate iPhone. Custom ringtones, and this list is just going to make me angry and angrier. I started this thinking I didn't like iPhone. All right, I kind of thought iPhone was okay. I can live with it for another 2 years, but my mind is changing as I read this list. Custom ringtones, another thing you have to walk through and do a bunch of hoops just to get that, and they don't save. I have set custom ringtones several times. It resets on certain updates or whatever, and it's just a pain in the ass. Hotspot. Hotspot tends to work okay. In Android, what you'd have to do sometimes with your carrier is enable a Wi-Fi hotspot. You had to use PDA-Net. You had to use Foxfi. Sometimes you needed a route. It was a little bit more difficult, or a lot more difficult, than just turning on the hotspot on iPhone. However, maybe this is because I have a different carrier and they have allowed me to do that. So I don't know. That's why there's a question mark here. But it so far seems to be pretty good. but I can do all the same stuff on Android if I know how to do it. Okay, DPI locked and too low. One cool thing about recent Androids is they expose the DPI slider. If you don't know what that means, it's dots per inch, and it's perception of how many pixels you're seeing on the screen, and it'll make things larger or smaller. Your apps will be larger, your text will be larger, or the opposite. I always think phones have a DPI that is too large, too small. I forget if it's up or down, but I want everything on the screen to be smaller so I can fit more. And you used to have to edit some configuration files in the bootloader or somewhere in the Android OS to trick it with root. Now they have a slider. iPhone, no such thing. You can make text in some things larger and there's like low eyesight mode, but I want to make it smaller. My eyes are fine. I want to fit more on this tiny screen. Browser. So opening things with the app. In Windows, in Android, there's this thing called default application. You should be able to open an application from another application and choose which application is open by default. iPhone, not so easy. Every single time I get an address, it wants to open in Apple Maps. I have uninstalled, disabled, force closed, whatever, Apple Maps. It doesn't exist on my phone. I can't open it. Every single time it tries to open in Apple Maps. I cannot have it open in Google Maps. I have to copy and paste the address, which, as I mentioned, is a pain, and open in Google Maps. So that's awesome. And it happens with several apps. Sorry, you're just going to have to get used to it on iPhone. Notification drawer. I've gotten used to this over the last 2 years, but I don't really like the notification style on iPhone. It's really not that good. No headphone jack. That's a problem with a lot of phones these days, except for that Unihertz phone that I just showed you. The App Store restrictions. Country and region. There are certain apps that I'd really like to get that are present in Europe, like some soccer apps or whatever. Can't do that on iPhone, and you cannot sideload any apps. That's another thing on Android. You can download an APK. There are several different app stores. What's slipping my mind right now? But free and open source apps are available to download on Android, which makes development on Android very easy and the user experience very easy. iPhone just makes it hard. Copy pasting, especially phone numbers. I kind of already talked about this. It's a pain. Default app switching, opening maps. I kind of already talked about this. It's a pain. Why do I have this in here twice though? Right, because I want to open something in the browser application. Instead, it will default to an app. It could be the same on Android, but what this is a list of cons I experienced on iPhone. So not necessarily every one of these things is unique to iPhone, but 90% of them are. No toast messages. Why is that not a thing? On Android, you have a little message that pops up. It's called a toast. That can be like a little status. Like, let's say an app crashes and it pops up a little message and says, error, no access, or file not found. Something like that, a little tip, and it's little messages that aren't really deserving of a notification or text, and they want to be in real time so that you see them right now so you can respond or understand why something happened. It's a toast message. Look it up. iPhone, no such thing. Horrible. No YouTube alternative. Okay, on Android, you used to be able, and you still are able, to sideload YouTube apps that can show YouTube without ads and so on, and different features and whatever. So in order to use YouTube and the experience I like, I use Brave browser for screen off and widget play so I can have picture-in-picture. And you can do picture-in-picture YouTube with the Brave browser, so that could be deleted. No background audio from the browser. I'm not sure what this is about. No background audio from browser. Right, so if I have something playing in the browser and I try to do something else, it'll pause that in several instances. Notification sound can't be changed, only text. Something you got to deal with. Clock app, limited options for alarm, etc. So in the Android app, you're able to set an alarm on a specific day because I need to wake up for a flight on the 18th. All I want to do is go into the clock or alarm app and set that up. I don't want to set a fully fledged reminder and miss the reminder because the reminders app is horrible and it's way too many steps. It's a horrible user experience to set an alarm for one specific day in the future. in the clock or alarm app or reminders. They're all terrible. No camera album in photos, everything lumped together. So in Android, you're able to kind of switch between a picture you actually took or something else. Not so with the album, and that goes with, that's a very simple feature. Time-lapse functionality extremely lacking. Yeah, you can start a time-lapse, but of course you'd want to be able to choose how often it takes a picture. Not possible with iPhone. Instead, what it'll do is it'll create a predefined length video of like 5 minutes, and even if you record for 30 minutes, it'll choose the frame time based on that 5-minute mark. So if you create a time-lapse for 30 seconds, it'll be at a different frame rate than a time lapse that you film for 3 hours, even if you want the same frame rate. Not possible to change without a third-party app. Can't copy files back to iPhone. Must use iTunes. There's another problem. With Android, you have the File Explorer. It's a standard format. You can open it on Windows. You can open it on Mac. You can drag and drop files and then view them in Android, and what you see is what you get. Okay? iTunes, you have to import and open the application and all this other crap just to transfer files back and forth. And that's music, videos, photos, anything you want to transfer. And no, you cannot transfer apps. Default file type is HEIC rather than one compatible. What is HEIC? I've never heard of that. What I've heard of are PNG, JPG, JPEG, photo file formats, not something that iPhone made up that is incompatible everywhere else. Locking screen stops most things. So that's an issue with apps that are playing things. You'd expect them to continue going when the lock screen is turned off. Android, you probably have an option to disable that. I don't remember this being a problem on Android. Like I said, it's a problem on iPhone. A lot of things that you're going to want to turn your phone screen off to continue doing because it's in the sun, it's in your pocket, it's in whatever, it's on the car. You will not be able to do that. Can't change animation duration. And Android, in the developer options that I talked about earlier, you're able to change things like animation duration. Animation duration is how long it takes for the screen to unlock when you slide it up. You notice it took about half a second. In Android, you can make that a quarter of a second. And now your phone is twice as fast, at least by your perception, because the animations take less. Unlock, slide to the left, everything that you do can be made faster. Not possible with iPhone. That'll come in a software update, probably when they make it faster by removing the animation duration. No USB-C. When I first got considering the iPhone 12 mini, I was really hesitant because there's no USB-C. I didn't own any Lightning chargers. My wife had a few. I have plenty of USB-C docks, breakouts, hubs, ports, adapters for all my other devices that use USB-C, like my computer, my laptop, my old phones, everything that uses USB-C like it should, or any standard whatsoever. Instead, you're going to have to use their own Lightning proprietary cable as well as adapters. And I don't think it's in here, but the adapters don't work like they say. I got an Apple Lightning to HDMI adapter, which was like $60, brand new from Apple or Best Buy. And it doesn't work to output HDMI. You'd think it would screen mirror like something like that does on Android. Nope. There's its whole other thing. So that was a waste of money. Family sharing payment methods. I'm not sure about this, but it's probably some security thing in Apple Wallet or something, but sharing payment methods. I don't know. You're going to run into problems with Apple Wallet. So it's really, really only convenient and useful if you forgot your wallet. I don't use it at any other time except for adding a ticket when I'm flying, which even then you can take a picture of what they send you and scan that instead. So it's really useless. No clear all tasks. This can be nice when you want to clear a lot of applications that are running. It doesn't really save any system resources because, again, this is a Unix or Linux based. It's meant to run a lot of things at a lot of times. There's no point to close applications, but if you have some problem where an application is maybe holding on to something or misbehaving, you want to clear them all. Not the case. You have to scroll them all up. Android, everyone I've used has had a clear all option. No Shazam widget. I think they've added this since then. Shazam, yeah, there's just integration with widgets that is worse than the regular app, and I don't feel like that was a problem with Android. With Android, you had an app, and it included features like a widget and an icon in the drop down and whatever, and they were all built in like one package. With iPhone, they almost operate separately from each other. There's no communication between the widget and the app, and then the icon and all this stuff. It doesn't make sense. They can't talk to each other, probably because of iPhone's architecture, which is horrible. Okay. Updating playlists with local MP3 and playlist files is a nightmare. So there's really no way to organize or move or mess with your music library on iPhone. They have a music app, but it's built for a subscription service just like Spotify. They barely have functionality to play files that you own that you've transferred from iTunes. So you're going to have to do all your organization in a file browser on Windows and then import them to iTunes and then import them to iPhone if you want to change anything. iTunes does not support FLAC. And I'm going to need some water here. The standard lossless format, despite pioneering portable audio with... I don't know if they pioneered portable audio, but they probably claim they do. And they don't support FLAC, which is a lossless audio codec. That if you want the highest quality music, you get FLAC. I have a lot of music in FLAC that I ripped from a CD or whatever else that I own so I can back it up on my device. Every other device I've ever used has been able to play FLAC. Okay, it's not something new. It's something that iPhone cannot handle for whatever reason. So you need to convert to a lower bitrate or some other audio codec in order to import into iTunes and therefore put on your iPhone. So that's great. iPhone to Lightning HDMI adapter is useless. Won't pass protected contact even if you own it. Most are gray screen and audio garbage. Yep, I already talked about that one. So we're already at 30. Can't disable lock screen. So on my Android, I usually disable the lock screen, which means when I press the button, I'm already on the home screen. Very quick. I have nothing on this device that I don't want people to see. Really nothing. And even if I did like a private photo, for instance, as it comes to everyone's mind, I can password protect that photo. iPhone, you can Face ID protect a photo, and that doesn't work very well. And still, even if you disable your passcode for the device, you have to pointlessly swipe up to get into the phone. There's still a lock screen that cannot be disabled. And you cannot password protect content if the lock screen is disabled. Or here's what doesn't make sense. In a wallet application, obviously you want your phone to be locked somehow so that someone can't steal your phone and then use the wallet where you have your credit card at a grocery store or something. Why not have the wallet application ask for your Face ID or password? It's that easy. You don't need it on the front of the device. If you turn off your passcode when you're trying to disable a lock screen, even though you can't, it will disable wallet, Face ID login for apps, everything. It doesn't make sense. Lock screen completely useless. I have to sign into any app anyways. Why would I have to unlock the phone, which just gives me a list of apps that I have? That's the only information anyone could ever get from a phone when they unlock it, because every app you have to log in. No offline, and the sensitive ones you log in every time, like with Face ID, like banking. So yes, it's two-factor. It's a little better, whatever. Your two-factor is you on the phone. No offline radio tuner app. So in the old Android, you're able to use a headphone cable as a radio, because it's a wire, to pick up FM and AM radio signal, and then you could listen using your device offline as an FM radio. I don't know if that's been removed. Jelly Star makes it seem like it has because they've re-added this functionality. I don't know. Maybe they're just claiming. No downloads. I use a media server called Jellyfin. iPhone is horrible about letting apps download content from anywhere. I try to download music, like I've backed up on my Jellyfin server to my phone, or this would be the same thing with Plex. It has issues doing it. I've found ways to do it, but it's not easy. No file explorer. They have a thing called files, and I don't know why it exists because it only confuses you. Things exist in files, but not anywhere else on the phone. With Android and any other computer system, there are a thing called files, which is a cool way to list out everything that's on the phone, and you can also find those things elsewhere. But in an iPhone, it's a completely different thing called files, which don't exist somewhere else. It's very odd, unintuitive, and you cannot go to a file explorer to see the files on your phone. It's just impossible. Pointless different media storages. Just like the files. Photos exist in the library, but not in files. You'd expect files to show a photo library. Nope. Some apps can only see files, like VLC. I can't download VLC and open the photos or videos that I have imported on the device because those don't exist in the files. I don't know why it's set up like this. It's horrible. No phone call recording. On Android, I think I was always, and I know sometimes, able to record phone calls, which was extremely important when I'm talking to tech support and other crucial phone calls. So why is this not a feature? I can easily take another device and press record and put the phone on speaker and it's being recorded. This doesn't protect anyone. Why isn't it an option? Please add this. Recent call logs only go back 50 or so calls. On Android, I can go back and see calls from years ago. iPhone, nope, they're deleted. Why is it so hard to keep a call log? It's a piece of text. Small screen mode is not designed correctly. It should not cut the screen in half. So I was extremely excited when I found this feature on iPhone. And it's called small screen mode. So let me open up an app. We'll try the Brave browser. Okay. Yep. And small screen mode, you swipe down and now it's half a screen. The problem is it's half a screen because the other rest of the screen is down here below the phone. You cannot access any of those buttons that just went away. It's not like a small screen. It's like moving the screen off the phone halfway. Why? How does that help anyone? Except for possibly reaching the top of the phone with one hand briefly so then you can go back to full screen mode. It's not good. One time, and I have a video on my channel, the iPhone glitched into a smaller screen. I know it's possible because I used Spotify with a screen that was about half the size of this. And I thought, wow, this is perfect. Someone needs to make a phone like this. So I recorded it, and that glitch hasn't happened in a long time. But man, I wish I could have that happen every day. I hate iPhone. Keyboard bugs. For the longest time, I had bugs with the keyboard. No one knew what it was. Took it into AppleCare. They didn't know what was happening. They replaced the screen. That was fine. But I still get some software issues, especially when there's a tiny bit of moisture on my hands or the screen. I'm not talking about I just got out of the shower. I'm talking about my hands are sweaty, or maybe I washed my hands and just dried them. It's bad. Keyboard bugs. Okay, no going back versions of apps once installed. So on Android, you're definitely able to go back to a previous version of an app if you can find it. Not so on Apple. So you're going to get whatever bugs they introduced in the new version, and you're not going back. Editing text. So on Android, you're able to long press on a piece of text and use maybe the volume keys or the space bar left and right. If you didn't know this, you can hold left and right or rock the volume keys, and I'm reversed, to move character by character, so you can then delete or add a character if you missed one in something you're typing, which is extremely useful in an address URL when you're trying to find a specific site. Not possible with iPhone. You get a little magnifying glass to look at where you're going, but it'll usually snap to another end of the word, and it's just horrible to edit text. Half-baked shortcut app. So in Android, there is a shortcut maker third-party app, and also some first-party stuff where you can create shortcuts to things like hardware features and whatever you want to do to customize the device to your own. iPhone has this, and there are some shortcuts you can create. Like for whatever reason, there's a sensor in the back of the phone that you can tap and you can have it do something with the shortcut app. Of course, it's not very well thought out. I tried this for a little bit to take screenshots, ended up with 1 million screenshots because it's too sensitive or whatever. It doesn't have anything like the hold button, like a hardware button that you can remap, and which doesn't make sense to me. The Unihertz Jelly, I just remembered, has a hardware key that you can remap to things. That's what this kind of thing is for. Symptom of everything, Apple being locked down and not allowing third-party innovation. Why are there no API hooks for the hold button? Why are there no API hooks for the volume buttons, the lock button, every other button on the iPhone for other things in software as well? Alarm volume tied to ringer. And in Android, it's very nice. When you do a notification sound, let's see if I can bring it up here. You get a drop down and you can set the volumes for everything: ringtone, notification, touch feedback, music. Android, they're linked or they're not linked, and you cannot really adjust them separately. That's all you get. No per app volume. It's another thing that sucks. Can't have one app play at a certain volume and one app play at another volume unless that app itself has settings in their app, which most of them do not. So if you want to hear two things at once, good luck. No app info page where one can clear cache data from an app. In Android, you can long press an app and clear its cache. I'm not talking about uninstalling the app like you can on iPhone. This gives you a more fine-tuned approach to troubleshooting if an app gets into a weird state, you need to reset it, but you don't want to spend a long time reinstalling things or whatever, disabling whatever. Awful forum support. It's also, never mind. Awful forum support. Apple community shut down for an activity within months of a question. No support on their forums, not enthusiast level. I need more water. An Android, like I said before, there are a lot of people who really love these devices and are spending time writing boot level code to customize these devices and whole OSs. It's a great system for enthusiasts that use these devices and want to make them better. On iPhone, it's completely consumer-based. There's no one really interested in improving iPhone whatsoever except for the people working there. And what you get is a bunch of people asking questions and no one giving answers. So, like I said, with the bugs being fewer on iPhones, sure, that's the case. But when you run into one, you're not going to be helped as well in figuring that out. I found full guides on my old Android on how to replace the motherboard and things. You're not going to find that in iPhone. Maybe now, but not anything like what they have for Android. Find My iPhone claim horror stories. Apple considers itself infallible. So this goes back to what I originally said about Apple Care being a false sense of security. You can look up Find My iPhone claim horror stories. Look up things like Find My iPhone, Apple not responding, or something like that. They consider themselves infallible. I read some stories where someone lost their phone in a concert. No problem. You have Apple Care Plus. It covers you in the event of a loss. They wanted to make her prove that she lost the phone and all this other stuff and ended up not replacing the phone. And it was a big deal when it should not have been, when that person paid money for that coverage and Apple was trying to deny them that coverage. It's just like an insurance carrier. It's horrible. Find My network setting. Apple continues to track while the phone is off. This is something you can actually change, but it's very hidden in the menus. And it's something called participate in the Find My or participate in something. And basically, even if you turn Find My iPhone off because you want to be not able to be found, which is, again, not possible because you're never safe. You will still be sending your location to other iPhones around you so that they can be found, and so on. It's this big network, and it's a big security risk waiting to happen, so please turn that off if you can. And it will not disable your Care or find a regular Find My iPhone usage if you still want to do that. You can still participate in Find My iPhone without sending your location to others to help them find their iPhone. So look into that. Restricting update features to certain models. So I don't know why this was the case, but this has since been fixed. The iPhone was pushed an update that let you put the percentage in numerals, like 100, on the battery icon, a feature that should have existed from day one. Been on Android forever. They pushed this as a significant feature update. People were very excited about this. iPhone 12 mini did not get this update. I don't know why. There was no explanation. A few months later, I do have this option. It was pushed as part of an update. Whatever. This is what you're going to have to deal with. Apple clogged processes innovation. Playlist sorting is one of the new features for iOS 16. The only explanation that something so simple was delayed this long is management incompetence. I work at a large company. We have these kinds of things happen all the time. Users, the customer, really want a very simple feature, but we can't get around to it because there's just clogs. And horrible process management, and this is the result. You're gonna get a feature, playlist sorting, like by alphabetical order or by date added playlist, by size, track length, these kinds of things. Very simple to implement if you know anything about code. Being touted as a brand new exciting feature for iOS 16. Usability nightmare to create alarm specific day. Talked about this. Changing notification settings. It's just a whole mess if you want an alarm on a certain day. And yeah, bedtime mode and all kinds of things are going to interfere with that. Delivered extra liked messages in text. No setting to remove. Yeah, this is just another bug I experienced. You're going to have things like this happen to you too. Change lock screen with no alternative. On certain updates, your lock screen is going to change. Sorry. Hidden photo app, only Face ID, no PIN code. This is one thing. So I've got some photos with certain documents like, hey, maybe I need to have a backup of my ID. I don't need that available for everyone to see if they happen to get my photos. I don't want them to have a copy of my ID to impersonate my identity too. So obviously you put that in a hidden photos app. Of course, you need Face ID, not a PIN code. What if I want someone else to unlock and see my hidden photo? I don't know. It's just, why is there not that option? Music not available in my region. So this is an issue with the music app. I download a song. I own the song. Or I rip the song. Whatever. However you bought the song. You transfer it to your iPhone. And now all of a sudden it says it's unavailable because it's not available in your region. These are songs, classic rock songs that were recorded, produced, created in America. And iPhone can't handle it. It happens. You're going to have issues playing an MP3 file or whatever iPhone translates it to on your Android. Or on your iPhone, I mean. Sorry, not Android. I'm talking about iPhone here. Why is music playback so difficult for Apple? They've lost their way. Okay, files not available, tricky file management process. This seems to be another duplicate. I'm glad I have those extra ones at the front because I'm still definitely well over 69 problems. Unintuitive, intuitive icons rather than text for certain settings, like changing audio player when listening to music. There are all kinds of settings in this drop-down menu here that don't make sense. They're not intuitive. I have to remember an icon and then change things. Cluttered and disorganized settings menu. I already talked about this. Broken settings search feature does not index every possible setting. There's settings I can find in the settings menu that I cannot search for, and I don't know why that's the case. And then I'll be setting right next to it that is indexed, and I can search for it, and it will show up. But other ones, no. Cannot change or spoof your location. VPN sometimes works depending on if you're on a browser or something like that, but a lot of apps can see right through that. Android, it's a lot easier to mess with things. No app options like clear data, clear cache. Sometimes uninstalling cannot fix broken apps because cache is stored somewhere else in your account. You're not getting anything for free on iPhone. Nothing is what it says it does. Nothing is what you think it is. It's always fake. Redundant reminder functionality between calendar, reminders, and alarms. Please just give me one app to do this. Make it calendar, make it reminders, make it alarms. Not all three. All of them interfere with each other. All of them overlap. All of them are missing features the other one has. It's terrible. Apple auto-generated password prompts can interfere with creating your own password. I've had this happen several times where I'm trying to enter a password. iPhone intercepts me and enters its own password without my consent, and will remember a different password than I put in. Battery health significantly worse than what I'm used to. Yep, I had to get my replacement when it dropped below 79% battery health. And I will comment because I was looking at the battery health very closely. We're already over an hour video. Towards the end of 2 years, it dropped below 90, maybe around year 1. And then once it hit 84, dropped a little slower, then dropped faster. It was very odd. Poor heat management on iPhone. I don't know if it's a symptom of just the iPhone 12 mini, but this thing is not good at managing heat. Constantly when I'm using maps, just maps, nothing else, no Bluetooth, music playback, streaming, in the car, it will overheat. Yes, I'm living in Arizona. Yes, the dashboard is in the sun, but really, I didn't have this issue with Androids overheating all this often. The iPhone is, at least the 12 mini, is not good for high temperature areas. Poor heat management on phone. I already said that. Auto dimming brightness when phone overheats kicks in way too often. This is probably something they need to tweak, but your brightness is going to be at the dimmest setting when you're trying to use maps on the dashboard or somewhere like that. And even using maps when it's not in the dashboard, like in your hand, it's going to get really hot, which is why I don't run a case, because it's going to thermos bottle that thing and it's going to die. It becomes very hard to see in daylight, even in the car. And I say daylight, but I'm in a car with tinted windows and it's hard to see the maps. Not good. Notifications pop up over maps. I explained this already. Restricted hold button functionality. Yes, why does the hold button mute notifications yet still wake my phone screen? Why don't I have an option to also not wake the phone? You got to put it face down. Dialed app not intuitive, hanging up calls, merging, holding, etc. Their default dialer it's not good. They're feature poor and not a good experience. So the 69th reason, even though if I explained several more than that, will be found in the comments. If you have an iPhone and have something you don't like about it, especially if it's relatable to Android, put that in the comments. And that will be the 69th reason. And I'm sure the comments will fill up with several different things that people have pet peeves about iPhone, things that they think is a con. This is a list of cons. So go check the comments because this list is not exhaustive. It will grow. Okay, and then I did Android and kind of didn't do this as much because I haven't been using an Android every day. But from what I remember, the hotspot worked well. Even though I had to do a few extra steps, it worked well. And I had several more options than the default iPhone hotspot, like what band I want to use, whether I want to use the Wi-Fi antenna, whether I want to use a USB cable. Those kinds of things are not available in iPhone. Okay, files, actual file manager with different apps that have access to your files in an intuitive way like any other operating system works. DPI, a first-party feature now in the Android OS. Headphone jack, something that kind of has been taken away from Android, but you do have an option for. Whereas with Android, there are no iPhones that offer this capability. You have to buy a weak little string dongle that takes up your, it's just horrible. And they don't make one that lets you charge at the same time. APK files from third-party app stores. I'm still not remembering the name of the one I would get the FOSS apps from. Anyways, install any version of any app. Yep. You can install a version of something like Spotify. When they take away your favorite feature or bug something out, you can go back to exactly what you were using before and be just fine. Or weather apps that change unexpectedly. Per app type volume control. I showed you this. And forum support. We talked about that. Someone else has had your problem and solved it, posting an in-depth solution, usually with pictures online. iPhone users are generally less educated, and I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. When I go to the forums, I'm seeing very simple questions and answers that deal with people that have never used a computer before, or I just can't explain it. And these forum posts on the Apple community or wherever else they're found are closed without an answer, or it's just like Microsoft support forum. It's the exact same thing. People are struggling and they're not getting help, and it's horrible. I thought the call quality was poor on my Android. I realize now that that's just the call quality on all phones. And maybe it improved since I've used the Android. That's probably why I wrote it here. The updates, that's one of the only things I can definitively say is worse on Android. You're not going to get as much update support in terms of time span and longevity for Android from the supplier. Okay, lots of caveats there. iPhone will support your device with security updates and some features and whatever for more than 5 years. People are still using their phones. They're secure, safe, whatever. From just getting updates from Apple, that's pretty painless. But can't go back and update if something breaks and so on. So maybe they tested a little better. Android, you're kind of out of luck depending on the manufacturer at 2 years, 3 years. Samsung and Google 4 or 5 years, maybe, depending on the device. You're screwed after that. So you really cannot pick an Android and expect to use it for more than 10 years unless you're willing to also, once those dry up, you're willing to sacrifice a lot of features that were first party unique to that phone, like an IR blaster, headphone, DAC, and so on, or like second screen functionality, whatever, to install a custom OS with different feature updates that are more recent, and more importantly, security updates. That's your only other option. And privacy and security. So Android OS itself is open source. You can contribute. Google, and this is probably a poor understanding, Google has kind of adopted Android and is developing it. Google develops apps that are not open source. They are horrible, evil apps that will collect your data and send them off elsewhere. You want to be Google free, which is harder on an Android. With an Android, your data is sent to multiple different parties. With iPhone, it's only sent to one, iPhone, Apple. So in that way, it's a little bit more privacy, secure, conscious. Only one party needs to be hacked on your iPhone, and that's Apple. Google, you have a few different things that could go wrong. So not as secure from a base layer standpoint. And I think that's all I have to say. I'm definitely going to be switching back to Android, and I'll probably make a list of pros and cons that is just as long as this for Android, and I want to switch back to iPhone. Is that true? I don't know. I'll find out once my iPhone 12 mini breaks, or I'm sick of it, or they release another Android that's affordable, like the Unihertz that has 5G, that isn't made in China with a bunch of Chinese spyware loaded onto it. I don't know. My options are pretty slim for a small phone. Maybe the Pebble Smart, the new small Android phone project, will actually release a phone around the time that I need a new phone. I don't know. But until then, I'm stuck with the iPhone 12 mini. So thanks for watching. Please leave your comment down below, and bye.